We price different. We know which customers are going to be more price sensitive than others. We know the ballpark that they're going to need to be in to get the business. At the end of the day, if the margin's not there, we won't take it. The easy answer is always, I'll give you a discount. But the tough answer is hold your guns, but in the long run, that's what's going to sustain your business. If you know how to price stuff and you know your costs and you price it appropriately, I would say try stuff, because sometimes you get into something and maybe you find out that, hey, that's what you're really good at, or that's where the need is in your market. And every market's a little different. We tried a lot of things when we first opened, and we took work on that we were doing profitable. It made us some money, and over time we said no thanks because we didn't like that work. But we waited till we had other stuff where we could afford the luxury of doing that.
I always said you fight your convenience, not theirs.
Absolutely.
Because you have to always stay in the mindset of working on the business, not in the business.
Even though I may not be an owner, I take an owner's perspective and I tell the owners exactly what I would do as an owner, and then ultimately they may get to decide to follow what I'm saying or not, but I always come to everything with that perspective. I said the first thing we're going to do is we're going to...
Want more game-changing insights from the best and last mile delivery? Stay locked in with Last to First. Follow us on social media for exclusive clips, behind-the-scene content, and expert tips. Subscribe to our podcast so you never miss a beat. Join the conversation. Send us some comments, drop in your questions, and become a part of the Last to First movement. Want to be a guest or know someone that should be? Hit us up and let's get them on the show. If you're interested in sponsorship opportunities, reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. Find us on social media with @LastToFirstPodcast. Send email to info@LastToFirstPodcast.com, or go check out our website and let us know how we can support, help, and bring you better content going forward. Now back to Last to First.
This is Tim Cocchia, COO of Xcel Delivery, and you're watching the Last to First podcast.
Running a delivery business comes with risks, but being unprotected shouldn't be one of them. That's why many successful business owners trust CUI Agency for their insurance and risk management needs. For over 50 years, CUI has helped transportation companies understand their unique risk, learn how to reduce their costs, and protect what matters most: their business, their people, their assets. Specializing in commercial auto, hire and own, cargo, warehousing, and other liability policies, the CUI team tailors each solution to fit your needs, coverages, and risk. So no more last-minute quotes, and definitely don't leave your future to chance. Visit CUIagency.com, speak to one of our experienced producers, and take back control of your destiny. Now back to Last to First. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next episode of the Last to First podcast. I'm your host, Jason Burns, and I'd like to give you a little flavor of the guest that's coming up before I say the name. I've said it a few times on the podcast, like sometimes there's the smartest guy in the room. I've been in a room with this dude many occasions, and truly is like one of the smartest people in the room oftentimes. And it's because I think he's got a diverse set of experiences in this industry. One, he's a lawyer. Two, he's run a family business. Three, he's been on the board of a national association. Four, he's worked for one of the leading technology providers in the space. Five, he now runs and operates a family business for another owner in the space. He works for their company. And so when you get this diversity of experiences, you can talk about things because you know it from doing it yourself. So I'm excited to have him on the podcast. This is really going to be a good episode, I'm telling you now. Tim Cocchia, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Xcel Delivery Services based in Arizona. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Man, I'm glad to be here because, when you and I talk off camera, we just talk, like we're normally talking about things that most people probably aren't thinking about in this industry yet. Forward things, future things, how technology plays into that. So we got a lot to talk about today. But on the first part of it, just Xcel Delivery Services, just so the audience gets to know who you are, what you guys do, where you do it at. Give us some flavor on Xcel.
Yeah, so Xcel Delivery is a regional carrier. We do mostly expedited or on-demand type of work. Yeah. We walk in without knowing really what we're going to do today, and we get our jobs throughout the day from different customers. We do a little bit of everything else on top of that, but that's our core business. All our drivers are TSA, so we're in and out of the airport all the time, tendering stuff to airlines. We have locations in Tucson and Phoenix. Okay. We actually started in Tucson, which is a really small market, and 7 years ago opened up, grew into Phoenix. Now Phoenix is 2 to 3 times the size of our Tucson office.
Nice. And so I said in the intro, you're not the owner, you're the COO. Who owns Xcel?
Mark and Kelly Spivak.
Okay. And you started working in the organization how many years ago?
7 now.
Okay. So just let's start there because we'll go back to the story, but you went from being an owner in the space, then going to work in different aspects of the industry, and now in a position where you're now helping the family grow. What's that experience like? The first thing I thought about, we talked about off camera a second ago, was, man, is it easier or harder doing that than what we both have done with going into a family-owned business and trying to create some change, and going into another family-owned business, but it's not your family?
Yeah, I mean, definitely similar but different. When you go into a family business, I don't want to say you have instant credibility, but people listen to you because you have credibility. It's your family's business,
Yeah.
so they kind of have to listen to you. But there's a lot of dynamics with the family business because you're working with, in my case, sisters and brothers and different people, parents, oftentimes in the business, and there's a lot of dynamics outside of work that come to work, and it creates its own issues. Going to work the second time, I think one of the reasons Mark and Kelly brought me on board was they felt very comfortable with me coming into a family business because I'd done it before. So I understood those dynamics. They have kids that are in the business that were doing various things. And, having been through that before with our family, like I could walk in and I understand that dynamic much differently than somebody else. So I think that played a big role.
Yeah, yeah. And you also just knew the business better at the time too, so you kind of could see things probably faster than the first time around.
The longer you're in this business, the more you learn from your mistakes.
So let's go back in time. So early memories. How'd you get into the industry? Tell your origin story about getting into same day delivery.
So my grandpa actually started a courier company in 1962 in Southern California. He was doing bank runs out of San Bernardino. Grew that business. My dad worked for him. In 85, my dad moved to Arizona, started his own company. Okay. I swore I would never work in the courier industry. Legit.
Look at me now.
I went to college, have a material science engineering degree.
Fast and reliable delivery isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. And that's why over 270 global brands trust Drop-Off with their deliveries. With real-time tracking, professional couriers, and flexible scheduling, Drop-Off ensures your shipments meet their critical destinations on time, every time, down to the minute. So whether you're in the healthcare, retail, or industrial sectors, or just need a logistics partner, Drop-Off has the experience, the delivery network, and the technology to propel your business in over 40 plus cities. Visit dropoff.com, click on Talk to an Expert, and use the L2F discount code and get 10% off your first month's invoice. Now back to Last to First.
Something totally separate from anything with the business. But while I was in college, of course, every summer I was running routes. I was doing title routes. I was entering data into the software for the company, and trying to help my dad and my parents out. And then after engineering school, I decided I didn't want to work in a lab. I like talking too much. A lot of that work is literally by yourself doing tests in labs. And a professor was telling me that he had been a witness on a case. And he's like, these attorneys don't understand anything about engineering. And I'm like, all right, that sounds like an opportunity. Yeah. So I went to law school and graduated from law school, passed the bar, worked for a company for one summer, didn't really like it. So I was trying to figure out where I wanted to work. And of course, my dad's business at the time was doing maybe $1.5 million a year worth of sales. Okay. He was a smile and a handshake kind of guy, like no contracts, no nothing. So I'm like, okay, Dad, let's work this out for 3 months. Yeah, I'll do this for you. Mm-hmm. And so that 3 months came and went, and then I'd see stuff in the business. I'd be like, Dad, why are you doing that? He'd be like, I don't know. That's the way we always did it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, he's like, well, why? His favorite line was, well, how should we be doing it? And so I tell him, and he goes, that sounds great. Can you go make that happen? Yeah. And slowly I was running our Phoenix office, and then we had a Vegas office. Mm-hmm. And of course they had a problem. I said, we would never have that problem here in Phoenix. He said, why not? And I pull out some procedure form that we used, and here's what we would have done. And he's like, all right, well, you need to go do that in Vegas. I said, well, I'm not over Vegas. He goes, we are now. And pretty much that's how it went for about 8 years. Yeah. And I ended up running the company, joined the CLDA in 2000. The first show I went to, I had never been part of the CLDA before. The first show I went to, I ran for the board. And I met someone who was on the board. They took me around, introduced me to a bunch of people, and I got elected to the board that first show. First time I was ever at the show. Now the funny part is the guy who was in front of me giving his speech was Rob Slack, who everybody, of course, knows, had been on the board for years. And he gets up there and he's telling this story about the guy at the bar the night before who was making fun of him for all his ribbons. Yeah. And so, of course, I know nobody, but I've given speeches before, and anything you can do to make people laugh is a good thing. So I get up and I introduce myself quickly, and then I talk about my dad, my background a little bit, and then I say, the last thing that I want to say is, Rob, I thought we put this all behind us last night, and we weren't going to bring this up again. Of course, everybody laughs, and I got elected to the board, and it's been a great journey since.
I didn't know that story. So, all right, so you you work your way up at the company, find yourself as the president. Your dad was still involved in business?
At that point, he did mostly sales.
Okay, all right, got it. And then how big did you guys grow to before you exited?
Yeah, at one point in time, we were at $20 million a year in Arizona.
Wow.
And then we lost several contracts when, like, the Bank of America went to digital bidding for prices where somebody came in and wanted to bid for literally half what we were doing before.
Do you remember those bids? Do you remember those bids would come out, those electric bids? It's like the online bids.
You could just see the price dropping.
You just literally see the price dropping.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about there's a thing. You know what? It's a good thing about this podcast. There's no CLDA rules here. Right?
Exactly.
We can talk, and this episode I just made up right now. We're gonna talk about all the issues, right? The issues in this industry. We can talk about it. Let's just do that. But we can talk on this podcast. We talk about pricing, anything we want to talk about. But the race to the bottom.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing. And at different points in time, it sort of seems cyclical. Like,
yeah,
things were good for a while, then you hit this point where customers start really pushing back hard. Even with COVID, things maybe got better for a bit. And I feel like some people now are starting to talk more and more again that they're getting more pressure on prices more than ever right now.
But why? Okay, I feel like we're our own worst enemies with that.
Oh yeah,
because like if we're going to literally sit there and go through a bid process where we're all watching each other just take less and less money.
Yeah,
like we don't value ourselves and our services, and this is somewhere this whole last and first thing about going from first into today's supply chain. Sometimes I think we have to act that way. Like we don't often hold the line on the pricing. You look at other big players in transportation. Every year, they're doing the opposite.
Exactly.
They're doing the opposite.
I think that there's a lot of companies in the transportation industry that started with a guy on a car, and he wasn't necessarily the most trained on how to go about growing your business. And at some point in time, some people's mentality is, well, making $1 is still better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then there's been the, age-old adage in this industry of like, you build enough volume and you can make some money, right? But it just never really works. You're constantly chasing that mythical amount of volume that you can make some money.
Yeah. I think, I don't know what could be done about this other than people maybe listen to this podcast and think about doing something about it. But we talk a lot about trying to find efficiency, stop density. We can get to all those topics today about how we try to achieve those things. But at the end of the day, the margin is so small right now. We should be thinking about how we increase the value and hold the value for the services that we know we provide, how critical we are to the supply chain today. Because you can't move anything without this industry anymore. Yeah. And
I tell people all the time that we're not the cheapest. I gave that up long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, and even as I'm talking to other members of the CLDA and stuff, and we're trying to find ways to work together, I think in a lot of ways the industry has moved from years ago being very competitive, secretive, like, you took work because you didn't want somebody else to get it and get closer to their magical volume amount, so they were making great money.
Yeah.
Now, I think most of us have realized that in this industry, in order to make money, you're going to have to.
Managing independent contractors and gig workers is tough. Between onboarding, compliance, insurance, and payments, it's a lot to handle. And one mistake can put your entire business in jeopardy. That's where GigSafe comes in. Your all-in-one solution for managing independent contractors and gig workers, seamlessly and cost-effectively. Get drivers onboarded in days, not weeks. Automate compliance and save up to 40% on insurance. Visit gigsafe.com and give them the L2F discount code to get 10% off your first month's invoice. Now back to Last and First.
Work with people, you're going to have to be honest and trustworthy and do what you say you're going to do, mm-hmm. and find ways to work together to get customers so that you could each make money doing.
Yeah, right. So, all right, so we may go on some tangents here, but let's next issue when you think about this industry, just to get your perspective. the use of the independent contractor in this space. What's your experience been with that? Have you worked in both models before?
Yeah, actually, my dad's company and actually his dad's company were both employee models, and we actually did a conversion from employee to independent contractors. And I stood up in front of our contractors and told this story.
Right.
I said, "This is why you want to be independent contractors." And I really believe in the independent contractor model, the motivations of the contractor and the motivations of our customers and us all align.
Mm-hmm.
As an employee, if you have employee drivers, you'll know this. You have the guy who barely shows up, screws stuff up. He runs a route, takes him longer than anyone else to do it, messes something up. You send him back out to fix the problem, right? Because he screwed it up. So you want to make a point of him fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it all, what should have been an 8-hour run becomes a 10-hour run. That guy got paid 2 hours overtime. Your second guy, he runs his route in 8 hours every day. Great employee. He gets paid for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Your third guy, he's your rock star. He gets it done in 7. So he either makes less,
Mm-hmm.
or you give him more work to go do because he's so fast. What's the incentive for that, right? So in the independent contractor model, those same 3 people, the guy that takes 10 hours, he got paid less per hour of his work, and maybe he's okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
It allows him to work at his own pace and maybe make a little less per hour, but he's happy with that. Or it incentivizes the guy that always messes up to get his act together or leave. And it self-polices. The middle guy, he worked his 8, he got paid the proper amount, he's good. Your rock star got done, went out and did something else. He made the most money. Like, it all aligns.
Yeah.
And all the motivations are exactly what the customer wants. Fast, efficient, best price you can get.
Well said. Well said. And the funny thing about it is when you survey the drivers, we've done surveys in the past, the vast majority, I mean, upwards of 80% of them, they see it the same way, right? There's true alignment.
100%.
Yeah.
Drivers want to set their own schedule. They want the flexibility to do work that they want. They want the flexibility to say, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like every day, there's a driver, we call drivers, you want to do this? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they want that. And frankly, a lot of them would not be employees. Like, they just flat out would they do something else because they're not going to be told, here's exactly what you're doing all day long. I don't care what you think about it. It's just, you run it this way, and they wouldn't do it.
So that brings it to the next part of the topic. So because of that, because we want to use independent contractors, because it does at least provide us the opportunity to give the flexibility to everyone involved.
Yep.
That creates an inherent risk. I'm getting to insurance and your experience with insurance. Like, we recently had conversations about insurance. So the big risk and exposure when you have independent contractors is higher non-owned coverage or contingent auto liability coverage you need in place to cover an IC if he or she damages property or injures a person.
Mm-hmm.
And the company has to cover these costs, right? And it can get expensive. Absolutely. So how do you try to mitigate that? How do you try to offset that to cover the company, but also you got to think about the driver and economics on the driver's side?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, we're very forward with our contractors that it's a cost of doing business. It's a cost. They have to have a very fixed amount of insurance. We spend a lot of time and effort to make sure they do, because we know the more effort that we put on the front end to ensure that we've got that first, I guess, amount of money covered, the more leverage we have with an underwriter to negotiate a better price or get a better price on the base insurance that we need to cover us for the one-off exorbitant claims.
Yep.
But we spend a lot of time doing it. I mean, it's not easy. You're collecting deck pages and proof of insurance and making sure it's the right name on the policy, making sure it's the right limits on the policy, following up when it's expired, following up when they change. The list goes on and on and on. It's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, if you're making a driver have a standard and have to do things to show that they're a legitimate business, that they know what they're doing in this industry, ultimately we feel like you're going to get better drivers then. If you don't follow up on it and you allow people that don't have that level of organization to do those things, well, those are probably the guys that are going to mess up your packages anyhow. Right? I mean,
pretty simple. Yeah. Well, and I think it's important because I know you guys are taking steps to mitigate those risks. Also looking at other types of coverages that drivers can have to help give them the commercial auto policy, while they're under dispatch. And these are important things because when you're running a business and the time it takes to be successful in this space, and it's a tight margin industry, you have to protect that. And so as difficult it is these steps, you gotta do those things because that when you go to think about exiting and selling, and you've gone through this and you've been through it in a couple of ways, and we'll come back to that. That asset has to be protected, and so any buyer is going to be looking at, are you properly insured? If you're not properly insured, they're going to discount your valuation off of that, and they're just making sure that you have all the things in place to operate the business as need to be.
And I think when you talk about family businesses, there's a whole other layer of responsibility to protect things because it's not just you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like it's your whole family in many cases, and so I think maybe having come from several family businesses.
Need to right size your business or scale it, and you want to avoid all the hassles and growing pains? Meet AdLink, your go-to partner for outsourced talent solutions, keeping your delivery operations running seamlessly and profitably. From customer service reps to dispatchers, including those difficult to staff nights and weekends, to back office admins, AdLink trains each logistics coordinator in your processes and native systems to get the job done right every time. And with top-tier security and compliance, your data is always protected. Optimize, scale, succeed. Go to adlink.com and use the L2F discount code and get $200 off your first month's invoice. Now back to Last First.
We're fairly conservative when it comes to insurance. We want to make sure that there's no gaps and holes because there's all sorts of places that you can have gaps and holes in the coverages you have.
Yeah. All right, so switching gears. So you got a background. So, finish the story because the ending of your father and your grandfather's first business, the name of the business again was?
Well, my grandfather's business was called California Messenger originally.
Okay.
And then they, at one point, and this is a whole separate long story, but tried to go public to compete with FedEx. They bought some planes never took off, so there's a whole thing with that.
Oh, sure.
And then that company ended up going out of business. My dad's company was Canyon State Courier.
Canyon State Courier. Okay. And so, when and how did that business exit?
Well, again, that's another long story, and talking about learning from your mistakes. So, the company was still, we thought, like over the last 2 years of the business, profitable on paper. We were having cash flow issues, which is something interesting with business. I was still young at the time. We had a CPA that was our controller, and come to find out that we did a couple things with cash flow went from billing after the fact to pre-billing customers at the beginning of the month for routed stuff so that we could get cash flowing early, and it helped for maybe a 7-month period.
Okay. And
slowly over that time, cash started getting tighter and tighter, and really we knew something was wrong. Like the numbers looked fine on paper. That's back then, when you were doing routed work, if you were making 1 to 3% bottom line, that you were doing good.
Yeah.
And we were at the low end of that, but we were making money, or at least we thought. Yeah. And what ended up happening was we basically our controller went on vacation for a week. We brought an outside CPA firm to audit the books, and we weren't making money. We were losing money, and so it was definitely brutal.
Yeah.
And so through that period, we ended up using a factoring company for a while.
Yeah.
That's never good when you get to a factoring company. That's just a slower death.
Yeah.
And so we ended up breaking up the company and selling off pieces of it, part of it to another company, Intelligent Delivery, and part of it to Vunex at the time.
A factoring company is a company that basically pays you a percentage of the receivables.
When you bill, they give you a percentage of the receivables, so you get it right away. And then they take a pretty sizable cut themselves, and they actually do the collecting of the money.
And their cut's normally around 10%.
I think 10% is pretty regular, if not more.
And if you were expecting to make 1%, your math is already pretty bad out the gate.
Yeah. But it was an experience. I mean, like I met with my VP of operations, like literally the Monday after the CPA firm basically came back to give us the results, and we we probably cut $150,000 a month worth of cost like that.
Right.
Because you do tend to operate a little differently when you're making a little bit of money versus losing a little bit of money. So we felt like we were back on the right track and would be able to get out of it, but there were just too many bumps in the roads afterwards. And once you're at that point with a factoring company, one little hiccup and it's almost over. And so we saw the writing on the wall coming. And honestly, my dad was really adamant about protecting the customers too, because at the end, if something had happened and we weren't able to provide service, we were doing stuff for Cardinal Health at the time, a lot of pharmaceutical. And so we just decided it was the right thing to do to kind of get it out and get the work to people that were experienced in it.
Yeah. How challenging of that experience was for you to have to kind of see that business be sold off at the time?
It was rough. I mean, it was definitely probably the worst part of my experience in the industry was going through that. But I'll tell you, I learned a lot through that. I mean, like you go through something like that and you realize, there's just so much. It was rough, obviously, because it was family business too. And my dad sort of, as that happened, somewhat retired after that. But yeah, it was very difficult.
Yeah. And so what'd you do next? Your next move was to...
So I went as a consultant to one of the companies. It was Intelliquick for 6 months as part of the sale contract. And then after that, they hired me on. Ended up working there and I wish I had kept every business card I had there, because I think it was like 8 titles over 8 years, from director of IT to director of operations to VP of sales and marketing to everything under the sun. Yeah. I think it ended up with VP of quality assurance, just because I did a little bit of everything.
So you had a wealth of experiences.
Yes,
and
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, and then you didn't end up at CXT.
Yes, so I left Intelliquick and went to CXT. Honestly, it was like a match in heaven at that point, going from the Courier side to the tech side. It's definitely a lot easier work. I mean, it was really probably the most vacation section of my career. Not that I didn't work hard there, but when you've already been on like the board of the CLDA and a lot of people in the industry, and you go to selling software, I could walk into anybody's office and go, like, I don't have to prove to them that I know what I'm talking about or that I know their business.
Right.
So it accelerated kind of the conversations with people a lot more. So worked for CXT, ended up as VP of sales and marketing. Towards the end, I would actually go into people's offices and just ask them, like, what are all the problems they have with the software? And they'd give me laundry lists. Jim Bernicker one day, and he was pissed. Because he had this big list, and he was ready to like fight about it. And he's like, you're not going to solve these problems. And end of the day, his guys come in. He's like waiting to hear, like all the things that still couldn't do. And this guy's like, oh yeah.
In the delivery business, efficiency is everything. And that's where Dispatch Science gives you the edge. Their modern, cloud-based, AI-powered transportation management system optimizes routes, tracks orders in real time, and automates processes to save you time and money. If you're serious about scaling your business and staying ahead of your competition, then Dispatch Science is your next move. So visit dispatchscience.com today and give them the L12 discount code, where you'll get 20% off your first month's invoice. Now back to Last the First.
Pretty much got everything fixed, and he's like, what? And I really loved that, because it was always fun going into people's businesses, helping them learn new ways that they could use the software. So
that also probably exposed you to all the different ways people in the space are servicing clients. The same client, different ways, different clients, and all the different little niches that were out there, verticals, warehousing.
Yep.
Yeah. So talk about just that the experiences you had.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm walking into businesses where I don't really know exactly what they operate. I mean, I know how they use the software a bit, and I can go in and see that. But you are correct. Like, this industry, we're not FedEx. FedEx, it fits in their box and in their vehicle, or you're not using FedEx. Our business is, tell me what I need to do to get your business. And I'm doing it different from you, from every other customer I have. And so it is an interesting like group or industry because of that, where we all do the same thing, but we're all doing so many unique things for customers because that customer thinks they know better than anybody else about how to do it.
Is that a good thing or bad thing? Like,
I mean, on some levels, it's good for stickiness because if I can figure out how to please that customer and be able to do their nuanced, version of what they want to see,
yeah,
they're not leaving me because there's not many people who can figure that out.
yeah,
But on the other hand, I mean, scalability becomes an issue. I mean, you really have to work hard at how you house your information, how do your teams access the uniqueness of each customer.
yep,
And so, I mean, for us, every time a customer comes on, we're doing SOPs that have, like, what's different about this guy? Like, you have your core that's the same, but what's different about this person so the team member can pull it up quickly and see and quickly get up to speed on what we do differently for that customer. And it's just about every customer has something.
yeah. We would have this process when we did our like sales to ops handoff. I would have a sheet called like delivery details, like and say we're delivering details. So every customer has a different set of details, and that's the unique part about it, right? Who can figure out how to solve those details, but then make sure that it goes downstream all the way down to the driver's got to know how to what box to go in and what the code is on the lock, and that's so critical to a single route. So the technology, but going back into your role with technology and how you learn how technology can help solve and automate a lot of these problems. What do you see like today from opportunities to automate?
Well, I mean,
find about businesses.
yeah, I mean, like, obviously with AI, there's a lot of things that can be done to take the tasks that we do over and over and over again that you can create some sort of rule to, or at least logic to how it's being done, and replace that with automation through AI. Whether it's, again, for us, placing a lot of orders through emails, updating customer website portals with the milestones of the delivery with pictures and things like that as it gets done. Automating some of the dispatch functions of looking at a picture and verifying that the box we picked up is the proper box because it's got the right serial number from the customer's order on it. I mean, all those things can be accomplished by AI. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how the software players in the industry, who makes the best decisions. Because I think that whoever does is going to kind of clearly jump to the front of all the software companies that you're going to want to use.
Got it. All right, switching gears now again. I'm going to go to sales, right? So all these experiences you have, we don't just touch on hot topics. So talk about one, how you help to grow Xcel. And then after that, if you're starting in the industry today, what do you think about how would you get your footing in the space?
Yeah, so with Xcel, it was interesting. It was one of the first conversations I had with Mark when we were talking about me taking a role with the company. Is, I asked him like what his vision was, because we literally had an office in Phoenix with one customer that had a couple of pallets in the warehouse. That's it. And so I asked him what his thoughts were on how we were going to grow. And he told me, we were going to hire some salespeople, which we never ended up doing. We can talk about that later. But when he was done, I said, well, the first thing that we're going to do, and we had the luxury of having an office in Tucson, where we had a lot of work from some big companies, but Tucson, there's just not a lot of volume always. So I told him the first thing we're going to do is we're going to contact every single company that we've ever done business with in Tucson and tell them we're in Phoenix. And we quickly added, a good chunk of business just from people that we had longstanding relationships with in our Tucson market. So we were kind of lucky from that respect.
Right.
Like if I was starting in Phoenix from scratch, I'll say that I would first looked at the national companies. They're always looking for somebody that's hungry to do a better job in certain markets, right? There's always some place that they need help,
of course,
because their current vendor just is not cutting it anymore. And so that, honestly, that's how we grew outside of our existing customers. We don't have a salesperson. We have an inside. Our owner is our inside salesperson. He'll reply to somebody who reaches out to us. We make sure that our website is really good, details what we do. We use a marketing company to do social media that brings people into our website who then sees what we do and where we are and get people to reach out to us. and that alone has grown us from nothing to a Phoenix office that's 3 times the size of our Tucson office. That's where I would start, because there's always people out there, those national companies, that they survive off having great agents in distinct areas. That would probably pick a distinct area that you can cover.
Yeah.
You know, like we're Arizona. It's it's easily identified. People say, ask other people that we know, like, hey, who would you use in Arizona? And our name comes up.
Yep. Yep. It's kind of keep the main thing. And you have a lot of people that I don't think they always understand how valuable it is, especially when they're coming in, because they always want to get that direct customer relationship. But the reality is you can also learn a lot from these bigger companies too while you're getting started. Learn about the certifications you need, learn about the type of insurances you need, because the worst thing you can do is kind of jump out there and like you said before, like you can be an established company, like it only takes a couple quick hits and you could be headed the wrong direction.
Absolutely. I think the other thing on the sales side that I would do is be open-minded. Like, as we were growing, we did a lot of things that our owner, someone else said, we've done that before. Nah, we don't want, if you know how to price stuff and you know your costs and you know what it's going to cost you to get something done and you price it appropriately, I would say try stuff, because sometimes you get into something and maybe you find out that, hey, that's what you're really good at, or that's where the need is in your market. And every market's a little different. Like there are veteran companies out there that maybe are really good at something that you think you want to do, and if you only try to do that, you're going to run up against a brick wall. You haven't found sort of the sweet spot in that market of where the void is.
Right.
And I mean, we tried a lot of things when we first opened in Phoenix, and we took work on, that we were doing profitable, and made us some money. And over time we said, no thanks, because we didn't like that work, but we waited till we had other stuff to where we could afford the luxury of doing that.
Yeah. No, that's sometimes it's hard, but you have to learn how to say no, but say no at the right time. It's like when you fire somebody, like they always say, like, you fire at your convenience, not theirs.
Absolutely.
Because you have to always stay in the mindset of working on the business, not in the business. That's kind of the cliche people use a lot nowadays. All right, he said, we're back. Last first, we're back, and I'm with Tim Cocchia, the COO of Xcel Delivery Services in Tucson and Phoenix, Arizona. All right, so I said I want to do something different on this episode, which is just pop around with hot topics. From a standpoint of drivers and how do you incentivize drivers in today's world where you are, it's more competitive because you have the gig economy, the Ubers, the Lyfts, they've taken some portion of drivers. You still have the aging population of drivers that have kind of getting out the industry. And what we do is harder because it's more customized than some of these other ones. So like it's not the easiest one. How do you find drivers, retain drivers, and how to make sure that they are a successful component of the business?
I think, with independent contractors, I mean, part of it just comes down to having the work and the money that you can get them. I mean, like, it really, I mean, that's probably the biggest component. Now, we treat our drivers fairly. We let our drivers turn down work. We offer jobs to them. We'll negotiate sometimes on jobs. Like, if it's a driver, we want to do this job and he can't do it for what we're offering, we'll ask him, well, what can you do it for? I mean, like treat them fairly, and they stay around. When you start doing stuff that and you're not going to do stuff that like all the time, because you have customers and they have to hold up a certain end of the bargain too. But if you treat drivers fairly, they say and maybe Phoenix and Tucson are just strange markets, but we have not had as much of an issue with drivers as other places. Okay. We have 70 drivers now between our two offices. We have good luck finding people, but then we're not the cheapest guy on the block, so we're paying our drivers probably a little bit more than the next guy. The gig economy, I rather than look at it as a bad thing, I mean, we look at it as a good thing because, our business ebbs and flows day to day. Monday might be busy, Tuesday might be slow, next Monday might be slow, next Tuesday might be busy. So we kind of like the guys that have other avenues of work. Like, they don't rely on us for everything they take home. They're hungry, and so they have multiple places. Sometimes that makes it tough on us. We have to have extra people because maybe somebody found a good job today, but they're normally available to us, and now they aren't.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I kind of think that those people that do multiple things and that have that hunger and drive to do that, they're the guys that want to make money, and they're the hustlers, and those are the guys we want as our drivers. And we do get pretty good feedback that at least what we pay them tends to be a little more than them doing one of those gig jobs through many of the apps, and so they tend to like what we give them.
Yeah.
And so it's been a good fit for us, at least between since those have come out.
The model, how you manage your drivers, how you structure the business in terms of like your dispatcher to driver ratio. Do you have a ratio you try to keep? How do you manage overnight delivery, weekend delivery? Like, how do you manage the business?
Yeah, so we typically have an on-duty dispatcher right now in each office, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be that way. You can combine that into one. It could be somebody watching both offices, and that's actually how we do overnights and weekends. Is we have one dispatcher in one of our offices because the volume is low enough that they can handle it. We tend to not have multiple dispatchers. Our volume isn't high enough to do that, but where we do stack against people is on the customer service side. So we find that we narrow down the duties of the dispatcher to solely be getting the jobs to the drivers, finding the drivers for the jobs, and kind of watching the service level that's going on. Whereas the customer service team, they do all the stuff that fluctuates. They answer phone calls, they enter emails, update portals, things like that. So we don't really have, right now we have one driver or one dispatcher to, heck, our Phoenix office has 40 to 50 drivers on the road at sometimes.
Wow. Are you using anything with the technology to help to automate?
Well, we put together a lot of stuff. We use, the drivers communicate mostly with our dispatch team and customer service with WhatsApp, which actually feeds into an email software package that then our groups, our teams can review, and so everybody can see the same emails. And then we actually can take it one step further. We can actually put almost like text notes between the email responses, so we can have a whole discussion internally, and then somebody who will answer the customer might answer based on what multiple people fed into that chain. And so it keeps all the information in one place. So when you go back and look at an order and you find the email that gave us the order, there might be a discussion before we even priced it. There might be a discussion after it was dispatched. If there was a problem, there might be a discussion of pictures from the driver. That the customer doesn't see all that. All they see is the emails we sent. But there's a whole chain of communication down the line.
That's awesome. That's hell of a tool, especially in our space because there's so many little details happening. You might need to have multiple people chime in on that. Yeah. What other maybe tools you guys use for measuring data or tools to be more successful from a tech standpoint?
Yeah, so I mean, we use CXC software. I mean, they, I guess surprise since I worked there. I know the tool well. I used to go problem solve people's companies using the tool, so I think we definitely use it. We use it fully. There's very little that you can't do with it if you know what you're doing. But our business isn't that complex, really. I mean, if you price stuff right on the front end, then the more of it you do, you're going to be profitable. And your drivers are contractors, so you know what your cost is. Like, there's a lot of things that are just fixed. I mean, after you get your brick and mortar up in a warehouse, there's not a lot of costs that ebb and flow. It's with the tick price. So as long as things are priced properly, it's it monitors itself, right? To a certain degree.
Go into pricing a little bit or more. So let's maybe start backwards to warehousing. So you guys have warehousing in both locations, I think.
Correct.
Right? And so how do companies leverage the warehouse in today's world beyond the cross dock?
So our whole goal with the warehouse is honestly to make money to pay for the building, to buffer the costs that we know we already have. And then, you mentioned cross docking. We do that a lot with our warehouse guys just to fill their time. But we have, hundreds of pallets sitting in our warehouse that we look for customers that want to store stuff that we can get deliveries off of. I mean, because we like getting it from both sides. But I mean, once you build up a clientele of pallets sitting in a warehouse, I mean, it pays for the whole building.
Yeah.
And so, now what your competitors might be paying 10% of every job towards their buildings, ours is effectively a net zero.
Right. So you cover that cost with it. Yeah. And it's important because if it can facilitate deliveries, you then start to get multiple bangs at the opportunity. When you think about pricing different verticals and trying to achieve margins, maybe the top few verticals that you guys service today, is the goal always the same with these verticals, or do you understand them enough to know that, okay, I need to be here with this vertical, there with this vertical, but together I can piece together the puzzle as I want to see it fit?
I think going back to like the lessons learned from family business, and it deteriorating is on the pricing side. Like, right, you always think, well, we can squeeze a little bit more out of it, or making something is better than nothing. But what you learn quickly is you really can't get in that race to the bottom. If you do, you're doomed. And so we tell people all the time, we're not going to be the cheapest. If you're looking for the cheapest, it's probably not going to be us. If you're looking for some combination of a value price, but quality service, and if that's what you need is the quality service more than anything, then we'll be in the ballpark. Different, I wouldn't say different verticals we price different. We tend to know which customers are going to be more price sensitive than others, and we know the ballpark that they're going to be in or need to be in to get the business. But at the end of the day, if the margin's not there, we won't take it. And we went back and forth with a major customer in Phoenix for 5 years. They kept saying, we want to use you, we want to use you, we want to use you. We'd give them pricing, and they'd be like, no, we can't do that. And then we're like, well, then we can't do it.
Yeah.
And eventually, about 2 years ago, that customer came to us and said, okay, we want to use you now. And we're getting a higher rate probably than anybody else from them because they know what they're going to get, and they know the value of it, and now they're paying for it. So sometimes the easy answer is always, I'll give you a discount.
Yeah.
But the tough answer is hold your guns, but in the long run, that's what's going to sustain your business.
Yeah.
Now, when we have pure on-demand customers that call us up right now and we run and do it, the margin over, I always start with, I tell my manager, what are we going to have to pay a driver? That's where everything starts. Because once I know what I pay my driver, I know the margin I need. And if it's sporadic work or random work, that margin on top of the driver is much higher than if it's every day, 3 o'clock, I run this run, or I supply a dedicated driver. I mean, dedicated driver is probably the lowest margin of everything. But all I have to do is make sure the guy shows up, and I make my margin.
Yep.
So my work on my side is a lot less than the on-demand driver, where I got to take pictures, I got to look at pictures, I got to place an order, I got to tell the guy that, okay, yeah, you got the right stuff, go. I got, so there's just a lot more work on those. And it takes years, I guess, of doing it, but now we know exactly what we need and what we can sustain for each of those types of things. So it's less vertical than it is kind of what they're expecting us.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right that you like to probably achieve a healthy blend of those two, the on-demand and scheduled, but certainly on-demand is much more challenging. And from a margin standpoint, you can do really well. There's some companies we know that just do all on-demand work, and they if you get really good at it, it's high margin work. All right, let's switch gears. I want to go back into your journey and when you were joining Xcel. Going from being an owner to being an employee, but I did you think about having some stake in the game, some equity in the game? How'd you try to figure out?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that one of the old CEOs of CXT was a sort of a mentor of mine, and he gave me some advice when we were doing that, because we were having negotiation and stuff like that. And he said, at the end of the day, if you don't own 50% of the business, there's a lot of negative things that whoever owns the most of can do to put pressure on you. They could have huge profits that you have to pay taxes on with no income coming in.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's things that pressures that can be put on you. And so his suggestion, from having gone through some of this himself, was, take a bonus structure that's based on profitability. Take an exit structure that's based on sales price or volume at that time. And so those are the routes I would recommend for somebody who's going in, unless you're going to be at least an equal partner. You get somewhat the same benefits without the possible things that can happen if the partnership falls apart. Right? You always think you're going to stay married to that person forever, but sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't.
We know a thing or two about that. Okay, and then your involvement on the national board, kind of what that means to you, and then from a tie into this, the future, we kind of get to where we're wrapping up the future of the industry, and from a national perspective of what you see happening, whether it be on the acquisition and consolidations that we continue to see happening, just the technology coming into play. Where do you think this thing is all going?
When I joined the CLDA, which was actually the MCA at the time, coming from a family business and just having my grandfather and my dad in the business, like it means something to me. And then working in the family business, I think when you've worked in a family business, you have a different dedication level just because it's family than maybe just working in an industry. And so I think after working for my dad's business, I'm the type of person, I just carry that with me. So like, I do that everywhere I go. Like I can't go into a place and treat it like a job. I never have, I never will. I think that's what's made me successful, is that everywhere I go, I really do, even though I may not be an owner, I take an owner's perspective and I tell the owners exactly what I would do as an owner. And then ultimately they may get to decide to follow what I'm saying or not, but I come to everything with that perspective. Yeah. And then personally from the CLDA, I mean, having Arizona as a distinct region that we've always been in, I mean, the relationships that you make on the CLDA over time, and granted, I've been associated with it for 24 years, so I've definitely put my time in, but I get referrals all the time from people that I've met, talked to, that I've helped, because this organization is very different from a lot of others that may have thousands of people where you're just kind of a speck on the map.
Yeah.
But really with the CLDA, it from day one when I joined, it's personal. Like, you make personal relationships that if you do what you say and you treat people fairly and you're open to helping them when they need help, you get it all back and then some. And 100%, I mean, thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business have come in our door because of that. Yeah. So
huge. And then just to close out, like, the future. So you're a guy that's very introspective. You tend to seem to study trends, technology trends. Whether it be, I recently did a podcast episode on electronic and autonomous vehicles, like AVs. Will they come into play? How much market share can they take over? Just thinking about AI and what that will mean in terms of changing how things are done, how people acquire information, or where our roles. Like what do you see happening? And is the arrow pointed up, arrow pointed down? What do you think?
Well, I think technology is going to help the industry by allowing us to continue to stay profitable as customers push back on us some. I think in the last couple of years, I think the last 4 specifically, you've seen a lot of companies using remote workers. I mean, we all worked remote during COVID, or most of us did. So we proved to ourselves that it could happen. And I think that really opened the door for people to go, well, heck, if all my workers could work from home during COVID, why can't I have a person in Colombia who speaks perfectly good English working from there? And a job in Colombia paying less than what we have to pay here to find people is an amazing job to that person, a life-changing job to that person. So you hire somebody there who is ecstatic to have this job. In fact, they're not going to lose this job because it's the best job that they will ever get, potentially, right? And so the dynamic really swings around when you're using those remote workers, and the quality of people we get is better than what we can recruit here. And we have to pay a lot more when we recruit them here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's going to continue.
Mhm.
I mean, the more and more people I talk to are looking into that. Again, I think COVID was really the spring for that, because people just started saying, we can work from home. We proved it to ourselves already. So what are we doing here? Why are we paying more money for potentially maybe even not as good people?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to continue. I think obviously AI is going to automate some of the functions that humans have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be, one maybe more step in customer service and reducing the amount of staff you need.
Mm-hmm.
But all those things, as they chip away at what our expenses are, I mean, it's going to reduce the margin that you need on top of the driver to get the job done. So, I mean, you could make as much money and charge less to a customer potentially.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
And I'm sure, you and I sit here, and trust me, if we knew what would happen, we'd be billionaires, trillionaires even. But somebody will come up with some cool idea for AI that none of us thought of. And it should continue to either improve service levels, improve quality that we can offer, or help us save costs to where, again, the margin on top of the driver doesn't need to be as much. Autonomous vehicles, God, people have been talking about that forever. But the problem is like, I mean, what's it going to do? Open up the panel on the side. And customers don't want to go outside to get their own stuff. They want you to bring it inside to them. So I guess maybe if they have an autonomous vehicle with a robot driver inside, we could make some headway there.
Somebody mentioned this on LinkedIn. I was like, well, when your Uber Eats driver comes to your house, you get up and go out to the door. You go outside, and I gotta chase my guy down because he can't get to my damn place. So when you go to McDonald's now, you're ordering your own food online. So there could be a scenario in which that does play a role. Not everywhere. I think a small, maybe centralized type application, it can work well.
Yeah, and very specific type of deliveries.
Yeah. But anything else? Any parting words, just in terms of your personal last or first journey? Tying in. We don't talk about it a lot all the time, but I think it's important. I like to bring this up because the personal side of all this stuff comes into play. Right? Your father, your husband, you got responsibilities. Like, how do you navigate balance all those things and still, bring your best, bring your A game to your organization every day? Yeah,
I think. Obviously, I owe a lot of that to my dad and the way he was and the way he always worked. So I had a great example. I think the favorite thing that I decided to do when my kids were young was I always take their birthday off. I work hard all year. I work hard, try to go to all their things, try to be their sports coach. I know you've done that a lot with your kids too. But my favorite thing of all, and just even as they've grown up, their appreciation for it, always take their birthday off. We go to breakfast. They get to pick what they want to do all day. We drive them around. We do lots of stuff. But let me tell you, a month before their birthday, they're like, all right, Dad, what are we planning this year?
Ready.
And they talk about it. They're like, oh, we remember that year when we did this. We went fishing. We did this. It's something that I think, like, you got to be, the word of the weekend was intentional, but you got to be very intentional with your kids. And if you don't pick something like that to do, then you miss a lot.
Yeah. I love that, man. As a father, there's nothing more special than the time you have to impact their lives. And so I'm going to do that. Their birthday's coming up. I'm going to do that.
They'll love it.
Tim, thank you for being on the podcast, man. I appreciate you, the wisdom you share, continued success to Xcel Delivery Services. And if you listen to what he said, the arrow is pointed up. So last the first podcast. I'm your host, Jason Burns. Thank you for being with us, Tim. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Now, y'all.
Right.